Right too. Okay, so I'm now going to go over the 4 and 2 book, which is our primarily middle school level books. We have 12 books in total. They're in a bit of a funny order, which can be a little bit confusing at first, but I've written it here. But it goes Alpha 1, Beta 1, Alpha 2, Beta 2, Alpha 3, Beta 3, Alpha 4, Beta 4, and then Alpha 5, Alpha 6, Final 1, Final 2, which can be a bit confusing, but it is just the order you have to get used to. It's not too difficult. You're never going to be the one deciding which the next book is.
Yeah.
That's all done for you. It's just, as long as you know which series comes first, you'll be a little bit more wise to the situation of what's going to happen. Again, all of these books are found on the TOPLUS catalog. You probably will want to switch to 4 and 2 specifically, and that way you can have access to all 12 books. And I believe, yes, they're now in order, which is fantastic.
Can I go there now to that?
Of course.
So where is the link for
1 second, I'll share it in the chat room. There we go. So if you click that link, it'll pop up with this window here. At the top, if you can recreate it, says John J.
Yes. I got.
And you want to go down to just 4 and 2. Topping and 4 and 2 will have both books you'll use, but 4 and 2 is just the 4 and 2 books.
Yes. Okay,
and or was just in order a second ago. Huh, interesting. I wonder why it's doing that. But it basically has all the books. A second ago, it was in order, but it should be Alpha 1, Beta 1, Alpha 2, Beta 2, Alpha 3, Beta 3, Alpha 4, Beta 4, 5, 6, 1, 2.
Mine are in a very strange order. I've got like topping 1. I've chose the 4 and 2 option. Is it Idong?
This one here. It should be just 4 and 2.
Yeah, Idong is move. Idong is move. Yeah.
Yeah. Press the button and it will switch to it.
Okay. Can I show you what I have on my screen?
Sure. I don't know if I have to stop sharing first. If you can share, let me know.
Yes. I can share. Just give me 1 second. I think this is it. Share. This is what I'm looking at. Did I do something wrong?
It may only let one person share at a time. 1 second. I'll stop sharing.
Oh.
There you go. Right. So press the Idong button.
Okay.
And there you go.
There we go. Okay, fine. Stop sharing.
No worries at all. Okay. So back on task. So this is just to help you. It would be nice if they were in order. I think they were a second ago, but whatever works. Anyway, I've written it down here just to make sure that everybody is aware of that little inconsistency. It's fine. So 4 and 2, in most cases, you are solely responsible for the speaking book and the writing book. However, more recently, I have found that we only are responsible for the last 2 pages in each speaking book units. That change happened more recently. So some academies are still having the native teacher do the whole book. If that is the case, you may need to adjust, but the current program that I'm aware of is that we are doing these 2 pages. It's F and the questions. Now, I'm using Beta 1 as an example book here, by the way, just so you know which book it is, but just for reference, E on the previous page is directly related to F, and they are sort of like a following conversation. So if you ever want to revise the contents that might be in this or review it with the students, you can briefly go to E first and then go to F. I'm going to focus on the speaking part first because the writing book is longer and it will have a bit more to talk about. But the speaking book, you basically have some role play as you did with the prep book and the upper topping books, and try and get students to role play as best you can. And then you have some questions about the book. It will generally be a question about what's going on, and there'll be like, why do they say underlined sentence, and where would this fit in best? And you got to choose A, B, C, or D. It's not too difficult. Most of the students in a 4-2 class past Alpha 1 can do this very comfortably. I don't think I've ever had a problem with this. Mostly for them, it's getting them to role play and getting them to actually, like, pretend to be the characters and speak fluently. But this part here isn't too difficult. I honestly don't spend much time on it at all. Maybe like maximum about 10 minutes. As you can see here, it's 10 minutes. But the bit which is actually going to be a bit more time consuming is this bit here. And so each of the 4 units in the book is going to have a different question, but every book will be the same type of thing. So unit 1 is questions. They need to give a 2-sentence answer to these. And try not to, oops, sorry, I'm scrolling down there. Try not to let them overlap with the questions. So go through the questions first, make sure they understand the questions. And the following questions sometimes will basically ask about different things. So you may need to maybe they need to write a sentence that's not using the answer going to be repeated in these bits here. This is for practice for their final test, which I'll get to a bit later. But this bit here is specifically targeting that part. So there'll be part A of their speaking test. For unit 2, it's always going to be a listening story. They need to make notes and write down what the problem is and how they would solve it, and then write a little short passage. For example, sorry, can I do this one here? The sentence, I don't know why that keeps disappearing off to the left when I touch it. So this is what was said, which you can read there. And the top one here is basically what the students could say. I've had students who say very silly things, like there's one about a kid who borrows his sister's media player and he loses it. And one of the students gave a response of, well, I wouldn't tell them because how would they know it's me? I thought, well, I mean, as long as you've rationalized it out, fine. I don't think it's a very ethical response to the question, but
as long as they say it in English, well, that's all.
yes, as long as they so, but this bit here is about listening skills, writing down some notes, and understanding the issue and trying to solve the issue where possible. And this is always going to be the same. So unit 2 is always going to be this listening one. Unit 3 is going to be pictures, and they need to make a story using the pictures. So I believe this character is called Bruce, and this one's called Sally. So they could say, Bruce and Sally are on Perth Street. They're deciding what to do for today. Sally asks Bruce what he wants to do. He goes, I want to go to the park. So they go to the park. After they go to the park, they walk past the convenience store or convention hall, whatever that's meant to be. And basically, they just write down a script, and they need to be able to say the script.
Do you make them do this in pairs?
This one, no. This one is solo work.
Okay.
The paired stuff is this bit here on the left side.
Just the role play part. Okay.
Correct. And again, this and the first, unit 2 and 3 and 4 are all the B type of the questions. However, I'm going to focus primarily on this one here, which is the 4th question. Nearly everybody will be doing this for 2 reasons. One, it's the most recent one they've studied, and 2, it is the easiest one to do in your time criteria. You don't have to do any listening parts, which you have to do in list number 2. And number 3, they can sometimes ramble on a bit too long about their stories, and it can get a bit complicated. Whereas question 4, or the unit 4, is always the easiest to do for them. So this one here, they have always presented with a graph. They need to basically explain what the graph says, why it says it, and then I like to get them to give an opinion or a statement about the graph of why they think it is that way, just to make sure they understand what they're talking about. For example, hobbies of students in Jane's class. You can say, I think that Jane's class must have some really good books they must read because loads of them like reading books. Whereas my friends like playing computer games or playing soccer or something. Like, it's up to them in that regard, but it will help solidify they understand what's going on. But these bits here at the end of each unit are important, but primarily this one here at unit 4 is going to be the one that most students will choose for their speaking test. You may have some students choosing 2 or 3. It is very rare, and usually only the final students, final 1, final 2, or alpha 6 would do it because they want a challenge. And at that point, great, they're probably going to be semi-fluent in English at that point, so it's going to be very easy for them. But for the lower levels, alpha 1 through beta 4, I would say try to avoid letting them do the others. Focus on this one for the speaking test. They probably would naturally do anyway. Like, there's no worry about me on that, from you about that. But in the schedule, you have 4 bits for the speaking part. You also have review time. I would use this review time to target the speaking book again, just to like try and help them refresh and make sure they are very comfortable with it. You will also have some time to review for the speaking tests, but we'll get to that in a bit. I want to actually cover the speaking test as one whole thing if possible. And now the primary part of the book that you'll be teaching is this writing book. Just to make it very clear though, the writing and speaking book are opposite sides of the same book. So on the back will be speaking, on the front will be writing. And then the reading and listening book are their own separate book as well. So students only ever need one book for your class and they should never lose it. But that's the books. They are one book, but it's why it's called 4 in 2, by the way. There are 4 books in 2 books. It's a very good play on words. So the writing book is generally where most of your lesson time is going to go for these 4 in 2 classes. You're going to start off with lesson 1, and you're going to start off explaining what the content is. This was about facts and opinions. You know, what is a fact? What is an opinion? I like to go through this and sort of make sure the students understand what this means, what it's about, just to like clear up some things. In this case, it's very simple because they should know what a fact is. They should know what opinion is just by innate nature. But sometimes they think opinions are facts, which is always very, it needs fixing. And in my little guide thing, I'm going to go down. So that's what you do on the first page. And the second page will always have activity A on it. Let's go there. So activity A is generally some reading or something to do with the aligned topic. And they need to either read it and write some words down, or they need to write some phrases. It's not too complicated, and they should be mostly fine with it. This bit here, it's generally quite easy to go through very quickly, so try and slow it down a bit. Not too slow, but like just slow it down enough so that you can pace the book well. Otherwise, you'll find yourself rushing through the books very quickly. Because it's writing based, the numbers in the class don't really play a huge importance of like how quickly the lesson goes, as opposed to all the speaking stuff you've been doing before where numbers really matter. So try and slow this one down a little bit, but not too much. You'll probably figure out how quickly you can do it. On the next lesson, or part of the lesson, which is this will be next lesson. I've written down the wrong bit, I think. Yes, I have. Okay. This is the next 2 pages. Generally, this is the second lesson, I find, or second part of the lesson, depending on how quickly you go through the first one or how interesting it is. I had one student who I spent, I think, 35 minutes just on these bits alone, just because he was fascinated by the topic at hand. I can't really remember. I think it was from final 1. I'll go back and look at it later. But we spent a lot of time on that because he was so interested, and I wanted to encourage him to speak more. So the next page of every unit will have B, D, and C. And these are always the same. It's just short sentence writing here, trying to get them thinking about the topic area And like sort of, in this case, it's about giving opinions pretty much. Do you think, how do you do? So they need to give opinions at this point. C is just vocabulary. This does not take long. If the students don't know the words, you can press here and get the Korean meanings for all these words. You can also Papago it. The students generally know these words. I think they're also in the Korean teacher's book as well. So I've never really had an issue with anybody not knowing what these words mean. Sometimes the translations aren't perfect because there's no direct translation for whatever reason. If so, they might ask questions, try and like give them alternative words they can use.
Yeah, sure.
D is very, very easy. Put these words in here.
Yeah.
Sometimes number one's done for you, or they have like 11 sentences, but you just put these words in here. And if you press a check, you can see where they go. Again, very simple. Most kids don't struggle with this. It's very easy. Sometimes they'd like to have fun with you, but I like to, if they are very quick doing this, get them to read it through, get them to say out the sentence, get them to practice some English. Very easy to do. Again, like no trouble. E, however, this is where things get a little bit more tricky. And that's because it's a lot similar to the prep book where you have to do that summary stuff. And again, like this is what I was saying earlier about how that prep worksheet is to help them with 4 and 2. It is basically this. Luckily for the early books, they have like I don't know, 2 or 3 words they need to add in. It's not too difficult, but they can't just copy and paste the words from here. They have to understand the context. Now, sometimes it will be just the words will be here. So uniforms have many purposes is not written here. So they have to understand that the context was asking for the word purposes. Dress codes, I mean, that's going to be in there at some point, and how uniforms are useful. And the conclusion, basically, children will always find a way to bend the rules. They will rebel. Like they have to understand that the word children should go in there. But as I said, the further the units go on, like beta 3 and alpha 4, I think, have some tricky ones in there from memory. They need to basically be able to summarize this correctly. So don't just use it as a reading exercise, get to read it all through. Understand this is the concept.
Comprehension is actually really important.
Yeah, basically. If you're strapped for time, however, in your units, like you're on like unit 3 or 4 and you're really pressed for time, don't feel the necessary pressure just to go through this and spend too much time on it though. So for like the early units, you have a bit more time because you've got the whole 12 weeks ahead of you. In the later 12 weeks, if you need to, just do it quickly and get it done. So like every now and again, I'll find myself like students haven't finished essays. I need an extra time to finish some essays up with them. I will skip over this very quickly. And that's fine to do. Like it, again, it's about time management, but this is one that can be done very quickly, but it is very useful if you have the time to go over it and do it properly, of course. Now, the last 2 pages in the book are interesting because the right side is basically the essay question you'll be doing, and the left side is a short, quick mini essay. Like I do like a couple of sentences, if that. So they're given like a guide question to pick from, and they have to write a small couple of sentences, maybe like a paragraph here. And ideally they need to do this in like a strict time event thing. So I usually give them like 2 to 5 minutes, depending on their level. And then they give it to me, I check it. If it's perfect, they don't have to do it again. If it's got mistakes, they have to rewrite it down here. The teacher's evaluation thing, you can just skip over that. I don't do that anymore. But I used to write, you know, work on your handwriting or don't forget your punctuation. But generally speaking, it's just they spelled a word wrong or they've put words out of order, and like your red pen on the book is going to fix that. This bit here, though, on the last page of each writing unit is the question that they will be having. Now, sometimes the questions may need changing. There's one about emails or writing letters. Both students have no concept of or don't do. Change it to something that they might do, like posting on social media or you know, Kakao messaging their friends or calling their friends. Just change it to something that they will be more comfortable with and they can have a bit more of an idea. Just keep it the same idea. It's generally written in a way that should be for or against or reasons why. They're typically very similar. And if you look at the beginning of the book, which I'm going to skip back to for a second, it does tell you which of these, it says it's going to be an advantage and disadvantage essay. This is going to be a personal essay. It's going to be agree, disagree. And this one's going to be a personal again. So you can preempt what the essay type is going to be by just looking at this. You're not going to be surprised by it if you actually read the book. But the students sometimes will say it's too difficult or it's too boring. Make it more interesting for them. The more interested they are in the questions, the more likely they are to write a good essay. Now, this bit here, you meant to do some planning here. Like, for example, this bit here, it says variety of information, take less time. That's fine too, but I honestly use this again for planning their essays out using a mind map. I believe there is something, no, this is an example essay. Yeah, there's an example answer. So I usually get them to write their plan here. And the reason I do that is that we do have that template draft paper, as I've showed you earlier.
That's right. So they can write the final thing on there.
Right. And by having it in their book, they will not lose their plan and they can amend it for homework if necessary, which does happen. Like sometimes I go, okay, well, the idea is a bit weak. Could you think of 2 other reasons instead, please? And they'll go home, they'll use their phone to translate the words and they'll come back with a much better idea. But that is basically how you teach the writing book. Scheduling wise, you have again about 2 weeks per book. So in my schedule for this, basically you want the essay plan bits are going to be a bit overlapping. That's fine. Don't worry about that so much. But try and keep it as your second class of the week or second class in the day as essay time, because it does allow you to have more leeway when it comes to making sure that their work is done on time. These essays tend to be a lot longer. I will show you an example of a student who's done one recently. 1 second. Where's my Zoom essays? So going back to Alpha 4, I'll go to Yuck's essay. So this is an essay an Alpha 4 student has written. It's all colorful because I asked him to do it. But this is the essay he has written. And that he's done this through using the plan, like we had a planning period together on this.
Do you help every student plan their essay?
I don't give them the answers. Or do you let them
try first and then they ask you, teacher, can you help me? Or how do you say, or blah, blah, blah?
Depends on their level. For lower level students, I'm a lot more hands-on. For Alpha 4 students, these guys, I just gave them the topic. I gave them some sample ideas that they could use. I think 3 of them. And I said, but you cannot use my ideas. Every time I was like, but you can't use this idea. I will generally target very common ideas and also extremely just silly ideas just to get them amused and engaged. But when it comes to lower level lower level 4 and 2, so like Alpha 1, 2, and Alpha 1, Beta 1, Alpha 2, they're still a bit new to the system, and I will go over with them. I strongly suggest that when you're doing the planning with them, you get them to write 1 extra idea than they need, or 2. So the way I do this is I will say, okay, for this example, do you agree or disagree? Nearly everyone's going to say agree because they're all kids of the digital age. I found 1 student who said no, and I was amazed, and she basically gave a good argument why libraries are better. But basically I said, okay, write down 5 reasons why you agree or why you disagree. And then I went through why some of those were just a bit too weak or they were the same. Because
Mm.
sometimes they're like, oh, well, I agree because I can use my phone. I agree because I can use a computer. I'm like,
Do you make them write like an essay for their extra idea?
no, get them to write a sentence, reason.
Okay.
So if I go back to Hyuk's essay a second.
Because I think you know our top list is just open, so we don't have that many students. So I'm just wondering, like, you know, if we have one student and we're trying to do like the essay thing, I'm trying to imagine it lasting for 35 minutes. You know.
The planning generally doesn't matter how many students you have, it will blow by. But if it doesn't, just engage them in conversation.
Yeah,
if
right,
they're
right,
really,
right,
really
of course.
smart, like this
Yes.
boy here, you know.
Yes.
So he's talking about why he would want to enhance his sight, right?
Yes, yes.
And this is what he wrote down in his book, was this statement here.
Mm.
I think he wrote, when someone wears glasses, it's stressful. And he goes, I can't see if I don't wear my glasses. And that's what he wrote down in his book as one of the ideas. And then down here was the other one, which has actually gone on for a bit longer. I think it was like, you may make more mistakes if you don't have the time. He's expanded that on stretch quite a bit. But like, he's gone through and done this. He's added a lot more content than I thought he should do. But again, like, this is somebody who's been doing this with me since he was like, I think grade 4 elementary school. He's now in middle school 2. He's just going into middle school 2, that is. But he's been doing this with me on and off for quite a while, and he knows how I want things. So he tries to do more than what I want, so I will leave him alone. Other students will find it a bit harder. I'm going to pick on John a bit here. Sorry, John. But John is, you know, he's a bit more new to TOE+, and he's a bit unsure about what should be done. So his explanation is hearing can be heard over the wall. I mean, I haven't edited this yet. This is only what the students have written down. So it should be conversations or sounds can be heard from a great distance if your hearing is enhanced. But that's fine. Like, I understand what he's saying.
Trying to say yes, right.
But he wrote this note in his plan. That's what he did. And I think he had 2 that were exactly the same previously, that were convenience and time, but he basically used them interchangeably. So I said, well, convenience one is good, the importance one is good, and money was good too. So maybe you should use those ones. With Hyuk, didn't have to give him any direction. He had 5 ideas. He was like, I like these 3, and he just did it. But it's about just drilling, giving them experience. And once they're experienced enough, they will just
go ahead and do it. Yeah, they know the drill.
They are very competent. As long as you keep to the structure, it makes these essays very easy.
That's right.
The only trouble I've ever had with 4 and 2 essays is getting students to write creative essays off brand to the book, because a lot of them they're not as comfortable being creative as they are being structural. So try and stick with what ideas they give them. If you have some students who are getting a bit bored of just doing the same old type of essay, maybe evolve it into something else. There are some units which ask for like an article to be written or an opinion piece. You might have students who push back against that. You might have students who engage with it thoroughly. Just do what is best for them and try not to push them into things they might be uncomfortable with doing in those situations. But on week 5, once that's all done, I review what we have done. So this is the best time to go back to speaking unit 1 and speaking unit 2, and you make sure that every student has written in their book, they've understood it, they've not memorized it, but they can kind of engage from it, mostly from memory. If you ask them the questions, they can give you the answers they've written down in unit 1. Or in unit 2, you can ask, well, I have this similar problem to the book. What would you do in that situation? They can give a verbal response that's similar-ish to what they wrote in the book. You won't have to do much for the writing book here, but if you do, for example, say you skipped over the article part because you had some time constraints, you can go back and go over that with them again there. Again, this is just a great time for them to just get things done. I just realized that should not be like that. Let's paste it in. format only. But that's just basically how that should be. Now you notice at the bottom I've got plan, draft, finish, plan, draft, finish. And that's because for the first few essays in a book, I find students are always a bit slow to kind of get things done.
Mm.
And it's great to have 2 good quality essays because those are the ones that can be submitted off to TOEFL+ headquarters for the monthly magazine that they produce for like best essays. And that's generally where I get my highest quality essays from. These last 2 essays I try and do within the next 2 weeks, but you can extend it out to the 11th and 12th week if you need to. Oh no, you cannot do it for the 12th week. Sorry, I'll get back to in a minute. But they should be finished by the 11th week. So mix and match what is best for you in that situation and time constraint wise. You could also do it in this review time, is finish the essays off if they're not finished there. But it follows the same structure of going through unit 3 and then unit 4. That's wrong. That should be something else, but I'll fix that later. So basically you've got about 2.5 weeks per unit for this book. And most of it is not going to be too difficult. You will have plenty of time with the 4 and 2 series to get that done. The reason why 4 and 2 can be a bit daunting at times to students is that the final tests they have are actually more in line with an actual test they'll be doing in middle school. So I always try and give them some time at the end of the 11th week to review everything we've done, finish any essays that need to be finished, and start choosing what they will be doing. So I'm actually going to see if I can find it. I'm pretty sure I've got one written down here. I think Alpha 3 we did recently, speaking test. Yes, here we go. So this is an example of part A from a speaking test. Now these will be printed out and given to the students by the Korean teachers as part of their speaking test, their 4 and 2 test. So for the speaking test part, they will be given 8 questions. And they need to give 2 or more. And I've highlighted this on my one because I want to be very clear. They need to write 2 or more full sentences. Writing 5 here is not an answer. Sometimes they used to do that with me, but none of my students that try that anymore. Like it's all, I have 5 classes a day on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and I have 6 classes on Thursday and Friday. That should be like a good answer for this. Or I have 5 classes a day, but my favorite day is Friday, where sometimes I only have 4 classes. But for this, basically, they need to write down, preferably all of these 8 questions. If you can ever get them to the state where they can write down all 8 questions and they've got good questions, and then you can just ask out any random question, go for it. But generally, you won't have the time to do that. You should be picking 4 of these 8 questions to ask them. So you'd ask question 1 or question 3, maybe you choose question 6 next and question 8.
So the students don't know which questions you're going to ask. They have to just be prepared for all of them.
They should be. Some teachers do it where they let the students know which questions are coming up first, so they can make sure their questions are really, like the answers are very fluent. I prefer getting them to write down all 8 questions and then
yes, I think
giving
I
them
agree with you.
between 1 and 2.
Yeah.
I generally avoid questions I know that students are going to have a difficult time with. Like if it's one that's going to they're going to give a waffly answer to, or it's just like it's too simplistic to give a decent 2-sentence answer to, I'll skip that one in favor for the alternative. But generally I will bounce between 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and 7 and 8. That's my style. You can choose your own style, what works for you, what your director thinks is best. Just work together as a team. It's normally something that is not that difficult to sort out, but they are given this the week before they take the speaking test. So they have time to prepare answers. They have time to memorize and commit to memory what they need to do. Following this, they are given, I'm going to actually open up this PowerPoint. So this is the Alpha 3 pie chart, which is the part B question. In the part B part, they're given a chance to do a listening, solve the problem thing, which I really strongly suggest you never do with lower tier students or ones you have too much students with, because they have to listen to something and it takes too much time. You won't have time to do it or complete things in an orderly manner. The second question is from unit 3 in the book, which is a bunch of pictures, but it's different from the book. So they'll be treated with new pictures. They have to make a new story on the spot. It is too difficult for most students. The third question is from unit 4. It will be the identical graph in every way. So you can preemptively make it yourself, or you can just go to the book, go to the speaking book, go to unit 4, go to the back, click here and just show this if you want to for your speaking test. But this will be always the same. And because the last thing they did is the most recent one they studied, they've practiced it recently.
They should be able to fly through it quite easily.
Yeah, it should be a non-issue.
Yeah.
And considering that you've got to do this alongside the speaking test questions, it's a lot easier if you do what's known to them. As I said, higher level, stronger students will sometimes want to do other things for a challenge. If the classes are not too big, indulge them. If the classes are too big and you just have no time to do it, sometimes you just have to say, sorry, I have to do this one for the moment because we don't have the time, maybe next time. Or if you they really want to do it, try and do it in like another class. Like if you have some time there in IBT class, you can just pull them out, do that in that time. But it's not very often that students will willingly push for that. I've had one do it, and it's because he's just very smart and he just wanted to do something different. He's always like, oh, but we always have these 3 options, teacher. Can I try do this one? I'm like, sure. And we did it, and he goes, actually, I like the third question better. Can we use that one instead? I'm like, sure, why not? Okay, fine. But again, like, try and encourage them to do that. It's just gonna make your life easier. I do wish we could do the other one better, but it is how it is. The writing test is generally 2 short questions, I believe, usually based on unit 1 and unit 3 in the writing book. Sometimes it's not. So the questions that you had in the writing book, it's usually like based on this one here or this one here, but it asks for between 60 and I think 70 words per mini essay. And that one, again, they have done the longer version of the essay already. They've probably done a better one, but they have a time limit to do it in. Some places do make you do the writing test while you're doing the speaking test. Others do not. It really just matters what your environment is. So I generally have it so that they are doing this writing test in a separate room, just because they don't want to be in the and then I'm pulling them in and they're doing the speaking test separately from each other. In another academy, I believe that they do it in the same room at the same time. So have them face away from each other, get the writing test done. But in my experience, so it has been that the Korean teachers doing the reading, the grammar test, the reading test, listening test with them, and they just get the writing test at the same time. And while the writing test and grammar test parts are going on, where they don't need to actually be listening to any audio files, you're putting them in, doing speaking tests, sending them back in, and rinse repeat until they finish their test. And at the end of that, pre-COVID, we used to have chicken parties. Sadly, that's no longer a thing, which kind of is quite disappointing for other students because they do miss their chicken parties. But most of the time you'll get this done like with like 20 minutes to spare. The students would be completely exhausted.
Yes, right.
It's the end of
to
the book.
Unwind or down. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just do something fun with them, relax with them, and sometimes you have an extra week because of various reasons. In that, if you do have the extra week, go over the writing test with them, go over the speaking test with them, tell them what they did right, what they did wrong, what they can improve upon. And when it comes to writing tests, by the way, be very kind with the marking.
Yeah, of course.
I generally -1 mark for each spelling error, punctuation error. But and then I will try and remove marks if the question just is not answered.
Mm,
But I will never give a student lower than 70 unless he didn't write anything.
mm,
Because 70 is such a low score for them most of the time. And the final speaking and final writing grade usually is only 10% each of their mark.
mm,
So like everything else is like 80% of what they're doing. And then this is like such a small margin.
mm.
You want to try and encourage them to do as best as they can. So like that is 4 and 2 mostly covered. If you have any questions, please let me know.
No, I think I'm okay. I think once I actually start using the books and getting into the classroom, it'll make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Right now it's a lot of information, but yeah, I think it's pretty clear. I'm not too worried.
I'm glad to hear that.
A good teacher.
I'm glad you think so. Well, students think I'm a good teacher, but I've never taught adults how to teach how I teach. Divine, do you have any questions?
No, I understood everything you said. And then if I have question, maybe I will discuss with Rob.
Okay, thank you very much.
Because when even you talk, because every student has